The day after Christmas, 1956, Theodor Geisel gazed at himself in the mirror, toothbrush in hand, utterly stunned at what he saw, or rather who he saw. It was the Grinch, not himself, or perhaps himself was the Grinch. Either way, his appearance was one of utter disgust, unsoftened by seasonal joy and holiday merriment. He hadn't realized until this very minute that his disdain with the Christmas season was so apparently written across his countenance, and almost immediately his inner Seuss leapt into action. There was no time like the present, he mused to himself, to work out his cynical view of what he had once seen as a time filled with all the cheer and goodwill the spirit of Christmas naturally bestows. In his writing, something had changed in him. Though he had thought it might have been the fault of the world around him, with the entire air around Christmas so filled with the hawking voices of corporate interests, spoon-feeding consumerism into the eager mouths of the public, that it was hard to appreciate the sights and sounds of the holiday the way he once had. See, it was their fault, with all their garish, brightly colored plastic decorations, the progressively useless items you absolutely must acquire, and Christmas songs written and popularized just to sell a commercial Christmas to an increasingly prosperous shopper. It had left him a slight shade of green. But then there had been the year previous, with all the worries and exhaustion, dealing with his precious wife Helen's health issues, and all the details, as they had worked to start their publishing business, Beginner Books. As he stood looking into the mirror, thinking his thoughts and making his plans, it became painfully clear how the man who currently grimaced back at him very much resembled the Grinch from his book, Hubbub and the Grinch, published a couple years before. His shoes didn't feel too tight, and his heart, well, it felt just right. The only thing to do was to sit down with his pens and a notepad, he thought, and scribble away until he could rediscover that something about Christmas that he had somehow lost. And so he did. His paunchy, small-hearted antagonist was the victim of the dreadfully joyful Whos residing in the valley below his cave, and everything about their merry ways made the Grinch hate the Whos and the whole Christmas season. Dr. Seuss could relate, but as he worked on redeeming his black-hearted fake Santa Claus, and himself through the clever rhyme and strokes of his art pens, he found the task at hand the easiest of his career to write, with the words flowing in typical Seussian verse in a 33-line poem. Within 3 weeks, the story was complete. Almost. And so he pondered how to end the story that redeems the crafty old sinner, without sounding like a second-rate preacher, and finally, in a desperate move, he finished the book without any statement at all. He simply drew the Grinch and the Whos together at the table in Whoville, and inserted a pun concerning the Grinch carving the roast beast. After having gone through thousands of religious options for his ending over 3 months, agonizing for the perfect tie-up, less turned out to be more. It was ready to be released for Christmas of 1957 by both Random House and Redbook magazine. It came as no surprise to children the world over. The awful Grinch, his sidekick Max, and the Christmas-loving Whos were a hit from the very beginning. Instead of preachily poo-pooing the commercialization of Christmas in a self-righteous tone, the clever doctor had gently and catchily reminded the world and himself that Christmas perhaps means a little bit more than all the bags and the ribbon, the bells and the toys, and even if all of these things are removed from the season, its reason would remain, as long as our heart's focus is right. It was the perfect mix of fun and purposefulness that made The Grinch That Stole Christmas such a beloved holiday favorite, which was confirmed again when in 1966, Chuck Jones, the cartoon director at Warner Brothers, and an old Army colleague from the animation department for the United States Army 1st Motion Picture Unit during World War II, adapted Seuss's Little Christmas Story for a television special. Geisel was infamously not a fan of Hollywood and had no intentions of giving them the rights to his work until his old friend approached him personally. Jones, who knew a Charlie Brown Christmas special was in the works elsewhere, and who thought a Seuss special was needed, storyboarded the Grinchy tale And after many meetings to show food companies, chocolate makers, and retailers, he finally ended up with a sponsor. Oddly, it was the Foundation for Full-Service Banks, who thankfully overlooked the lines disparaging Christmas coming from a store and bankrolled the project anyway, to the delighted gratitude of children everywhere. With the inimitable Boris Karloff eagerly lending the Grinch his voice, the cranky old Christmas hater and his reluctant companion Max enchanted children and adults alike as they slunk and slid, lied and stole, and ultimately confirmed what every child already knows. Christmas is a thing that resides in a grateful heart first, and a store second. Production of the tale was an elaborate affair, with CBS giving Jones a budget equivalent to just under $3 million in today's economy. It was the highest budget for a cartoon at the time, with a Charlie Brown Christmas coming in at a mere quarter of that. Thousands of cells of drawings, backgrounds, and characters made up the work of the highly respected animators responsible from taking Seuss's poem from page to screen. Seuss, upon seeing Jones' illustration of the Grinch, laughed and pointed out that he had drawn himself, to which Jones had succinctly replied, "It happens." The Grinch, who on paper had had no color to speak of, suddenly blushed in a charming chartreuse that perfectly accented his slimy smile, while Max took on a personality that can't be found on the pages of the original piece, but rather must be read in between the lines, or at least we suppose. The noble canine, who is obviously the Grinch's best and only friend, was based on Jones's childhood dog, and was given a personality that expanded the runtime of the special from the book's read time of 12 minutes to its slot-filling time of 26 minutes. 3 songs were written and produced for the animated special, including the popular "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch," sung by Thurl Ravenscroft, whose bass voice was most recognizable as Tony the Tiger. After a year of work, the special aired on the 18th of December, 1966 on CBS, to an audience of 38 million viewers, and became an instant holiday classic. Again. The pixies who live in our house adore the Grinch and all his very flawed and, funnily, human quirks. His devilish charm as he steals Christmas beneath the nose of Cindy Lou Who, and his ultimate redemption when he realizes it was his heart that had been the problem all along. And of course they do. When my younger sister and I were very small, our father would read us the story at our insistent demands, and ever so often attempt to stray from the written word as he enchanted us with its telling. But his unscripted meanderings were always quickly set back on course, as his audience could recite the entire story by heart and would not tolerate any improv on Seuss's genius. He didn't mind our firm hand in this, as it amused him to attempt to slip things by our eagle ears, and each year, despite never boring of having the book read to us, we would nonetheless wait excitedly to watch the special bring our favorite Christmas world to life, with no shenanigans in the telling that we could detect. We hope you enjoyed today's video, and that you'll join us tomorrow for day 8 of our Advent calendar. Now go turn up You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch, and dance about until your heart is filled with Christmas. See you tomorrow.